Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretshmer. We're calling these 2 days of broadcast You Are What You Eat. And the guest on today's broadcast once again is Nancy Wolfson-Moche, who is talking to us about nutrition and about the value of vegetables first thing in the morning at breakfast time.
Would you be reusing something that could be warmed up from the night before, or would you be preparing something first thing in the morning like you would if you were cooking, as you mentioned earlier, porridge or something like that? Or are there things that can be prepared in advance and then either eaten cold in the morning or warmed up without destroying whatever value they have to your body?
So I love that question too. And in my book, in each recipe, I give a cook-ahead tip. So if you're just going to do a steamed vegetable, like steamed broccoli, no, you really can't do that ahead. I mean, you could, but it's much more delicious to eat it really fresh, and also it only takes about 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing, so I have a recipe for edamame hummus in my book, and that's something that you could make the night before and take it out. You don't want to eat anything too cold in the morning, but you could take it out 5 minutes before you're going to eat and spread it on a piece of steamed bread or in a celery boat or a cucumber boat and have it. And that would literally take just a few minutes to prepare. So depending upon the cooking style, yes, it can often be prepared ahead. But with really quick sautés or, steaming or blanching, that's something you should really do in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But in my book, the recipes really include many, many different cooking styles. So there are a lot of things that you can just reheat gently. And I often suggest that people start that way so that it doesn't become a burden. It becomes it's a pleasure.
As far as the introduction of vegetables to breakfast and the entry point, is it better or easier or maybe more salutary for the person who's introducing themselves to that, for themselves or their family, to do it on a gradual basis and get people themselves or members of the household accustomed to this sort of thing, rather than, surprise, look what we're going to be doing from now on at morning time?
So when you say gradual, do you mean maybe eating them 3 out of 7 days a week to begin with?
Yeah, something. It could be. Yeah, that's one way I could view what I asked. Yeah, sure.
So yes, the other thing I often suggest to families is that if this idea of a vegetable for breakfast is going to seem really radical to the children, you introduce dishes that they already know and love. So if your child really loves roasted carrots, and that's kind of your go-to vegetable dish, serve it for breakfast. Remember that we're hungriest at breakfast because we've been fasting. So it's actually a great time to introduce foods that children may not ordinarily be excited about.
Yeah.
And the same with us. I mean, we're hungry, so we want to eat. So if vegetables are on the table, they'll probably get eaten.
As far as liquid vegetables are concerned, some people have been really high on juicers and using juicers and taking things and turning them into juice as opposed to eating them raw or eating them in some fashion that, as you mentioned earlier, would be a higher fiber choice. Is there a place for people who like to juice things to use that as part of their palate for vegetable use?
So again, I love this question because I am not a smoothie fan. The thing about, so I am a fan of juicing, but juicing is best late in the afternoon. It's a great thing to have when your energy starts to drop about 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The thing about juicing or eating a smoothie or drinking a smoothie is you don't get to chew it.
Mm-hmm.
So chewing is a really important part of the digestive process, right?
Okay.
Chewing is the part of the digestive process that we have the most control over. Because once it leaves our mouth and enters our esophagus, we basically don't control what happens from there. So I mean, if it's the only way to do it to begin with, then I think you could do it. But I think that chewing vegetables is one of the most important things we can do for our overall health.
Would you care to suggest a recipe that you may have at hand that you would suggest as maybe a representative sample, perhaps, of what you might do, let's say, tomorrow morning, for instance?
So why don't I say what I did this morning?
Okay.
So what I did this morning I had some beautiful arugula, and I rinsed it, washed it pretty well, actually. And then I took a skillet and I put about 1/4 of an inch of water in it, brought it to a boil, which happened very, very quickly. And then I added the arugula, a little bit of sea salt, and within 2 minutes, the arugula turned an even brighter green than it was to begin with. I added 2 or 3 drops of soy sauce, and it was ready to eat. Really, it took all of 5 minutes from start to finish. And you can really do that with any fresh, dark, leafy green vegetable, bok choy, or dandelion greens, or collard greens, or mustard greens. Some of those may sound more exotic.
Yeah, except that I can go into supermarkets here in Connecticut, in the area where I live, and you will find those items in the produce section of the grocery store.
Absolutely. I find them up here without any difficulty at all.
Would you be okay with normally doing most of that kind of purchasing at a supermarket, or would you go to a farmer's market or someplace maybe closer to the source of where something like that might grow? Would you have a preference, or would you have a concern one way or the other about where they come from or how you obtain them?
So I have a real concern about where they come from and who's grown them and how they've been transported. So I definitely prefer local farmers markets whenever possible. So up here in Northwest Connecticut, it's kind of a short season. It's 4 months. Or
this is true.
5. But I always try to shop at farmers markets, also to support local farmers and local farming in general. So in the winter months, when we don't have those options, I try to buy organic produce, or some, there are a lot of local greenhouses that also sell their produce in grocery stores. I try to buy that whenever I can, and I certainly try to buy American, even though the distance from California is quite far. But I do try to buy things grown in America that haven't been transported by air.
What point of contact do you point people toward to get your book and to find out anything else you may be able to show them in your blog?
So I have a website called youarebecauseYouEat.com. That's the name of my business. And if you go there, you'll find my blog, and on my homepage, it will direct you to where you can buy the book. It's available on Amazon. It's available also directly through me. You can get a signed copy with a plantable seed paper bookmark. Go to my website.
Go to your website.
YouareBecauseYouEat.com.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for speaking with me on this occasion.
Paul, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Nancy Wolfson-Moche has been my guest on these 2 days of WIHS Journal broadcasts. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. That's 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretshmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS, Middletown.